morning. Well, thank you. There was one. All right, we'll try it again. Good morning. I was hoping that with an extra hour of sleep that we'd get more people here, right on time. People are gonna sleep in and really enjoy that extra hour. Any announcements this morning? Anything, anybody?
I have one.
Yes, please.
I don't know how many of you saw this picture in the paper this week. Sparrow's Nest shelves are empty. And when we went to grocery, we bought some canned goods for Sparrow's Nest. And Jan and I were sitting at breakfast yesterday talking, and it seemed like just a small dent in the needs of what their needs really are. She mentioned a time when we went to a church, a Methodist church in Largo, and they shared a food pantry with several other churches, and their food pantry had gotten run down. It was at a time of year when the food had gotten run down. So they brought a panel truck, covered one of a fairly large, like you rent to move furniture, and they challenged people to fill that. We went to the 11 o'clock service that morning, and we got there fairly early, and that truck was pretty full by the time we got there, and they announced afterwards that they had an overflow. What I'd like to do is next Sunday, I'm gonna rent a truck myself. I'm gonna rent it, I'm gonna bring it here for both services. I wanna challenge you all to fill that truck. Now, certainly our lesson this week is on risk-taking in mission and service. And I don't know of anybody who takes bigger risks and doing service to the needy in this town than Mike Culpepper. And we all heard the bad news where Grits had to close down. But he's had Sparrow's Nest going for years, and Faith Works, and Right's a friend, and I'd like to lead this church into helping Right. Their needs are canned goods, peanut butter jelly, almost anything that's non-perishable, pasta, disposable diapers, baby food, and Wright suggested when we talked to him yesterday that you check for sales. For example, we bought, they have pineapple at Bears Teeter's this week, 10 cans for $1. Green Giant veggies at buy 2, get 3 free. And Publix had a sale, buy 1, get 1 free. So check your newspapers, and you can buy, you'll be able to buy extra stuff you could if you buy it on sale. I'm going to have the truck, as I mentioned, at both services. Now, I would like to say one thing. If somebody knows of somebody who has a truck that's willing to donate it, what it would cost me to rent the truck, I could buy in food. But should that not occur, I will rent the truck and have it here. I'm counting on you to support me. Thank you.
I would be happy to add that just one little smidgen to your thing about the sales stuff. If you guys use a computer, there's a website called Southern Savers, and it will actually alert you of all the possible weird deals you can get, to the point where sometimes they tell you how to grab a coupon out of the gas station and literally get things for free at grocery stores if you know how to combine your coupon and the right purchases and stuff. So you could maybe even do better than just do the 2 for 1. So.
Yeah. I'm gonna look that up. Southern Savers?
Yeah, Southern Savers.
Look that up. Okay, a couple other announcements. Now, remember, a couple things coming up. Of course, today we have our first of our little crop of 7 babies being baptized at the 11 o'clock service. If you want to stay for that. But I would like to remind you too that, of course, this week is election. Vote on Tuesday. We will have supper on Wednesday night. This coming Friday night, we're going to have spaghetti dinner in the garage. I think we messed up on scheduling. We put spaghetti. We're having spaghetti Wednesday night too. So yeah, I wish we could change that menu. We'll see what we can do about changing the Wednesday night menu. But we're going to have a spaghetti dinner in the garage, and that's going to be the kickoff of the mission fair and commitment weekend. So everybody's gotten their card and their form in the mail. So fill that out, bring it with you, and you can either turn it in Friday night or sometime Saturday morning till noon on Saturday. The garage will be open if you'd like to sign up at one of the booths for mission and service for next year. We have some new rack cards. Now these are made for PR for our community. When the mock-up of this was being made, they had other pictures of other people, and I said, it'd be great to have our people, and she said, we've got that plan, this is just a mock-up of what was being done. I want to thank Monica for following through on this and getting it done. Now, these are professionally done cars. We have some of these down at the marina. We're running the van this morning for the first time from the marina up here, so I hope there's some folks down there. We put some of these out in the bathhouses. They let us put them in the lounge and so on. So we've got some folks that are attending regularly from Brunswick Marina, and hopefully they're going to let folks know too. But these are made so that you can, in fact, Shannon's picture is in this. Ed's picture is in there. Yeah, Shannon's in the bus with a bunch of kids, and Ed and Jan's picture's in this. Debbie's picture's on the front, and Jill Reeves and Lexia and Nicole, her mom, and a picture of the church. So anyway, this is a neat thing for PR. Take one of these with you and put it somewhere significant. Put it in a place where you see, people post communal notices and that kind of thing, stores, whatever. So they're back here on the table this morning. Take one of these with you when you go. Remember your commitment form, your commitment card. Remember the mission fair this weekend. What else do we need to announce? Anything else? Oh, yes, good. I knew there was something else. This afternoon, 6 to 7, there'll be a baby shower for Kyle and Shannon in the Welcome Center. Now, I think by the time this service is over, I think the plan is to have a little tree out there. It's an ugly little thing. It is not a pretty tree. The thing that's going to make this tree pretty is putting gift cards on it, okay? This is just some sticks. Now, what we want to do is decorate that thing and turn it into something. So, bring a gift card, put a gift card on the tree sometime between the services. But the actual shower is going to be tonight between 6 and 7 here in our Welcome Center. Okay, good.
Anything else, anyone? All right, as you're willing, as you're able, will you stand and join us for our opening song this morning as I Will Follow.
When you move, I'll move. I will follow.
Rachel's doing the slides and she really wanted to say, can I say howdy, y'all? By all means. We're a friendly church. All right, but now that we've greeted each other, it's our time to take a moment to return back to the Lord some of a small portion of the blessings He has so generously bestowed upon us.
We've got to work out a different exit from that stage, rather than coming up this way. Screen. Okay, today's subject is risk-taking mission and service. Now, it's not even a text, it's just a reminder of what Jesus said in Matthew 25, in verse 40. Whenever he was talking about the end times, he was talking about the signs of the end times, he was talking about what would happen, what people would say when it comes to serving in the kingdom of God. That there would be the righteous and the unrighteous. Neither one of them would completely understand who it was they were serving whenever they took upon themselves to do acts of ministry and service. And he mentioned things like feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, visiting, being with the sick, visiting those in prison, and so on. And the righteous, as well as the unrighteous, would be the ones who would say, we didn't know. We didn't know it was you. And this is what Jesus said in the 40th verse, and then he repeats it again in the 45th verse after he talks about the unrighteous who did it for other motives. But in the 40th verse he says this, and the king, I saw, and I'll stop there just for a second because I saw, somebody sent me an email that said, doesn't matter who's elected president, Jesus is still the king. I like that. Doesn't matter who's elected president, Jesus is still the king. I have a feeling that this election is kind of like that Alabama and LSU football game last night. I'm not going to know who won until it's completely over. If you went to sleep before the last minute of the game last night, you don't know that Alabama won that game last night in the last minute. So anyway, this is what he said. The king will answer and say to them, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, who did it to me. And I want that to be the preface for risk-taking, mission, and service. And I want to quote from from day 28 in the book, which I thought was notable. He said, the author said, what's the opposite of risk-taking? What's the opposite of risk-taking? Safe, predictable, comfortable, certain, convenient, and fearful. Now that's kind of interesting because, you normally don't associate, and I really think there's something you could really unpack in that statement. Safe, predictable, comfortable, certain. We don't think of fear in those terms, but when it comes to risk-taking, there's a certain element of fear that comes into it, isn't it? Fearful. These words do not describe the ministry of Jesus Christ. Risk-taking, mission, and service reminds us that congregations are not ends in themselves. They are resources God uses to change lives and transform the world. Now, some thoughts before we come to the Lord's table this morning to take communion. Risk takers. I've known some risk takers in my life, just in everyday living. When I was growing up, I think there was a certain amount, a certain side of me that wanted to be a risk taker to a certain push the envelope to the edge, particularly when it came to motorsports. I raced, when I found out what motocross was all about, I raced motorcycles. Now, there's a lot of risk taking when you race enduros and motocross motorcycles because your goal and believe me, this was back in the pioneer days of motorcycle racing, but your goal was to be the first one into the turn down there whenever all the bikes were starting out together, maybe 25, 30, depending on the size of the motocross event. But you wanted to be the first one in the turn because inevitably there were going to be 25 wrecks behind you. And that's just the way motocross racing was. So whatever it took to be the first one in the curve, I was the first one in the curve. I can tell you honestly that any of the times that I raced, I was the first one in the curve. Now I can also tell you, I never won a race. I never won because I wasn't quite the risk taker that it took to make all the jumps and to keep in the trail and to keep following and to keep all the way to the. Now I could finish, but I just wasn't that good of a rider. But I was blank bent for leather. As you know that saying, getting to the first curve. I did not want to be in all of those piles of motorcycles behind me after the first curve. We were standing in a temple in the rock city of Petra in southern Jordan, which is Jordan's national treasure. This is the rock carving in sandstone that is done that depicts an ancient temple inside, and the marks that the men used to the cutaways that are used were used for handholds and footholds to climb up the side to make these carvings of this facade. Now you saw this facade if you saw the Indiana Jones, the Temple of Doom. This was the facade on the outside when they rode the horses down that steep, that very narrow valley, then opened up onto this beautiful temple site where we cooked breakfast on those steps. And it's a national treasure. It is probably Jordan's greatest national treasure. This city was unseen by white men until the late 1890s, until 1898. Everybody had heard about the rock city of Petra. It's even referred to in the Old Testament, in Israel's travels around the Sinai, but no white man had ever seen this, or at least none had ever seen it and lived to tell about it until the 1890s. And but we were standing on top of one of those places, and one of the points, I can't quite describe it to you except to say that there was an opening in that place that probably wasn't from here to there. It wasn't quite 3 feet. And the guide that took 3 of us up there, and I was young, newly married, seminary student at Emory. And there was an easy trail to get up to it, and you stood right on the edge, and then to jump out to the pinnacle was just a little 3 foot. I mean, you could almost put your foot across it and stretch out and make that, step across the gap. The thing is that when you stood on the edge and over to that big dome that was over there, carved out of sandstone, y'all, it was 160 feet straight down. 160 feet. Now our little guide, little Bedouin guide that had taken 3 of us up there said, "This is easy." He got up there and he just went. And he said, "No, that's easy. Y'all can do that." Not a one of us could do it. Not a one. I like to think that I'm a brave person. There's a part of me that's brave. When I stood there thinking, I know what would happen. I'd get ready to make the jump. My knees would give out. I'd be headed 160 feet straight down without a parachute. Did y'all see that jump that guy made out of a balloon, went 120 miles into the air and jumped out of it, broke the sound barrier for free flight? Oh my goodness, just incredible. Now, there are people in life who are risk takers. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We don't necessarily associate risk-taking with the kingdom of God. We really don't. We don't associate taking risks. We want our religion to be safe. We want our religion to be comfortable. But just as Bishop Snazy says, Jesus' ministry was anything but comfortable. It was anything but comfortable, particularly when it came to people-to-people relationships. Now, the place that we want to be the most comfortable is in our people-to-people relationships, in our person-to-person relationships. There are very few people that we will allow in our intimate circle of influence. When you get in within 3 feet of my face, you're in my personal space. If I get within 3 feet of your of your face, I'm in your personal space. There are not a lot of people that we will allow into our personal space and get to know us. There's always risk whenever you let somebody come in to your personal space. Now, when I think of risk-taking in the kingdom of God, I can't help but think about the people that I've known whose lives have influenced me over the years, who have completely and selflessly taken a risk of leaving what was safe and comfortable in this country to go overseas to take the message of Jesus Christ to people who had never heard it. My own great aunt and uncle, you may have heard me refer to their names, Mary and Enos Hess. I have a barrel in my possession. It's not a big 55-gallon barrel. It's a small barrel. It probably holds 25, 30 gallons. It was probably at one time a grease barrel, from the old days. But it's got the metal lid on it that had the the little wings. Now, if you've ever seen these, you'll remember them, but they would pack a barrel, tap that lid down on it, had a rim around it, and then they would bang those leaves down over the end. That sealed the barrel up. Now, I've got this barrel in my possession. This barrel was one of the barrels that my great aunt and uncle, Mary and Enos Hess, used to pack their belongings, to put on a tramp steamer, to go to the Belgian Congo in 1907, to carry the message of the gospel up the Congo River. Their name is still revered along that river because they founded churches that exist to this day, and they are some of the very, very first white people to go up the Congo River. The Congo River is a big river. At the base, at the mouth of it is the capital city of the Congo called Kinshasa, and it's a marvelous place to visit. But the further inland we went, when I went on a mission trip to the Kapanga province, which is way in the interior, 8 hours by flight into the interior. The more I thought about my great aunt and uncle being in that land, what they gave up in this country, what they were willing to set aside, the risk that they were willing to take in order to carry the message of the gospel to people who had never heard. And I've often asked myself, what motivated them? Now, having known them very little because they were ancient when I was born, and I only knew them after their retirement from the mission field, and I only knew them as very old people. And I don't know. But I have often asked myself over the years, what motivated them to do what they did for the sake of the kingdom? What motivated them to want to go halfway around the world to preach and to teach the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ? That these people must have been risk takers. Now, I want to bring this back home because we have to use sometimes the extravagant or the broad or the expansive in order to illustrate what's so close to home. What is so close to home. When Jesus talked about mission in ministry in this passage in the 25th chapter of the book of Matthew, he's not talking about the Belgian Congo. Now, later on, when the Great Commission is given, he said, I'm going to send you out to Judea, Samaria, to Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria. That indicates expanding concentric circles into the uttermost parts of the world. Now, that comes later. But right now, what he's talking about in risk-taking mission and ministry is just up close and personal. It's doing something in the name of God. A cup of cold water. Feeding the hungry, clothing the poor. Now, I told Ed, when Ed called me this week, he said he and Jan were touched by the picture that occurred in the Brunswick paper, Brunswick News, about the empty shelves of FaithWorks Sparrow's Nest. And I said, Ed, we need to let people know that part of the publicity for this is that when people knock at my door, and where my office is, from the circle out there, they come up and knock on my door, I send them to the Sparrow's Nest. Every month we give a certain amount in our local mission offering to go to the Sparrow's Nest to help them keep the shelves supplied. The need sometimes is overwhelming. Monica can tell you more directly about the need because she works part-time with Wright at FaithWorks along with working with us part-time at the church here as pastoral associate. So there's a desperate need. Jesus isn't talking about the risk takers who go around the world. He's talking about the risk takers who live right here, who are willing to get involved in mission and ministry where we live. There are hungry, there are poor, there are people who need the assistance that we can give in His name. Now, when I think very specifically, Jesus was willing to send. He understood the need of those who were not even of the house of Israel, as he referred in one cryptic statement one time. He said, there are those who are not of this household, who have needs, who are part of the kingdom and part of the needy. But when I think of Jesus' actual person-to-person ministry, I think about the risks that he took when he spoke to the woman at the well. That woman was at the well because that was the time that prostitutes, or those who had no good reputation, or those who had children out of wedlock, that was the time when they went to the well. They didn't go when the rest of the decent women went. They didn't go to the well to draw water early in the morning for their families. They had to wait until the ladies of good society left the well. You see, by that time, it was just the women who didn't have a good reputation and travelers. And Jesus immediately, when he begins to talk to her, is already putting himself at risk by talking to this woman of ill repute, this woman who had no reputation in her own community. When I think of the woman who came in and anointed his feet during the last week of his earthly ministry, here's a man who is taking a risk because his entire ministry could be at stake if the wagging heads and the talking heads and the rolling tongues get moved. And we see it starting in the scripture because they say, look at this man. Doesn't he know what kind of a woman this is? And yet he's letting her take her hair and anoint his feet. When I think about the fact that there was a zeal that he had for the kingdom of heaven and God's kingdom on earth, and the prophet was quoted saying, the zeal of thine house hath eaten me up. That when Jesus comes into the temple and he sees the blasphemy taking place, and the risk that he's taking, the risk to his ministry, the risk to his reputation, in upsetting the tables of money changers and taking a braided cord, a whip. You see, they weren't going to leave easy. They weren't going to just walk out because he was mad. They weren't going to just fold their tables and leave because he was upset. Took a whip and drove about it. Because, see, it's hard for us to get separated from our money. It's hard to separate us from our money. And I think of the risk that was taken. And I want to share with you, and I want to close with this, and we'll take communion. I do have a little bit of a challenge this morning. But in 1956, there were 5 young men. And you've probably seen it. How many have ever seen the movie End of the Spear? Anybody here? John, you seen it? Okay. Go online or go to Blockbuster, wherever, and rent that movie. It'll change your life. It's called End of the Spear. It was made in 2005. There are 5 young men, Jim Elliott, Pete Fleming, Ed McCullough, Nate Saint, and Roger Dare. Now, I can't do justice to the entire story in these few minutes. All I can do is condense for you what God has laid upon their heart to go to Ecuador to reach the Waodani people with the gospel. They were a tribe that was higher in the mountains. Listen, let me tell you a little bit of technology that these men used that I thought was just absolutely fascinating. They would lower a bucket, a tin bucket, a big bucket like a wash bucket, on the end of a rope, and they would put in this wash tub, they would put things like axes and things that primitive people could use. Now, you had to be an incredible pilot to do this. Nate Saint was the pilot. They would lower this bucket when they got to the place, and Nate would begin to circle the airplane. And this rope would drop down a couple 100 feet with this wash tub tied on below. They would lower that thing down. Now, at first, it took a while for it to, a few minutes and a few circlings until Roger had that wash tub perfectly situated 200 feet below the airplane, and he's circling around it. It was so heavy that the bucket just stayed like a pivot. And the airplane circled around so that the Indians could come up to that bucket and pick up the axes and the food and the blankets and the things that were in that bucket. Now that's an incredible feat of flying in a Cessna 180. The doors cut off. That's what they did. He flew around 200 feet in the air like this, and that bucket, is almost dead stop down below at the center of his circle, and that thing just keeps flying around, and those Indians are taking things out. Now, they did that for weeks, trying to get an open door. And one day, in April 1956, 5 of them. Now, that's too many people to fly in a Cessna 180. I've been in one. It's a 4-passenger airplane. They had a hunting rifle in the back, just in case, for the tigers or the jaguars. They landed on this beach where they had been lowering this bucket and giving these people things. Now, y'all, it's an amazing story. If you've never read through Gates of Splendor, you need to read it. It's a book written by Elizabeth Elliot, who was Jim Elliot's wife. The book is entitled Gates of Splendor. There are incredible stories that came out afterwards, that when those men landed, I mean, the conversations that they had with each other as the Indians began to come out, and they were carrying spears, and the missionaries tried to decide if they were going to use the 2 bullets that they had to defend themselves, and they decided that they were not. And those 5 boys died that day on that beach, on that sandy stretch of river. Now, years later, Steve Saint, who actually helped produce the movie Into the Spirit, talks about it from his vantage point as a young man. You know, this is what leads up to this communion this morning. Steve Saint prayed that before he died, he would have the opportunity to take communion with the people who killed his father, and to read the story from Steve Saint's own words of what happened the moment that he, long story, I can't do it justice, but these people came to know Christ in a very real way. And Steve Saint got to serve communion. The man who told him that he put his spear into his father and watched him die. When we talk about risks, we talk about risks. Lord, what are we risking for the kingdom? The title to Elizabeth Elliot's book came from the 4th stanza of a hymn called We Rest on Thee. These men sang this before they left in the airplane. This is the 4th verse. I don't know if I can read it. We rest on Thee, our shield and our defender. Thine is the battle. Thine shall be the praise. When passing through gates of pearly splendor, victors, we rest with Thee through endless days. Amen. Lord, help us be willing to risk for the sake of the kingdom. Risk our reputations, our churches, our lives if you call us. Jesus took bread and broke it. Said, this is the risk I'm taking for you. After supper, he took the cup. He passed it to him. He said, this is the risk I'm taking for you. As you come up to take communion this morning, took a tiny little risk this week. We just got our dates confused. I've done this in 2 other churches, and I think it's a wonderful random act of ministry kind of thing, but I committed to the Brunswick High that we would feed a football team a team meal sometime during football season. It's $400 a meal. And when they called for it this week, said, you said you'd do this? I said, we will, and I just got my dates confused. And they said, well, we're counting on you all this week. So I said, well, make sure, I called Kit, and I said, make sure that as sports director that we're good to go with Glen Academy. And then we called Frederica. So I committed the church to $1,200 in meal. Now, Debbie and I put $100 toward this because I believe in this. I've done this before in other churches. And, you know, it's just, I sent the teams a letter, said we support our local athletes. We want y'all to know we're proud of you. So if you would like to participate in that, any offering that you leave up here as a part of communion offering, half of it will go toward the feeding the teams, the meals. I said these meals are compliments of the Brunswick First United Methodist Church, and half of it will go toward the Sparrow's Nest and help them buy food. So come and receive the communion. Come and receive the elements. We'll ask Kim and Annie to come first, and then Jesus. Y'all come.
As you're willing, as you're able, will you stand and join us for our closing songs? Don't wait your moment.
There is a candle in every soul, some brightly burning, darkest times. Carry your candle, run to the darkness, seek out the hopeless, deceived and poor. Carry your candle for all to see it. Take your candle and go light your world. Carry your candle, run to the darkness, seek out the hopeless, confused and torn. Hold out your candle for all to see it. Take your candle and go light your world. Take your candle and go light your world.
We receive this benediction, Lord, as we go from this place. Help us to be willing to risk for you. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Take a rack card with you, put it somewhere down.